Hey yo friends, as a One Piece fan I want to ask you something right now. Do you think it could happen that Zoro becomes stronger than Luffy? We have to keep in mind that Zoro is now in possession of the Conqueror's Haki and even the Advanced Conqueror's Haki. And he is even a natural enemy, meaning swords of Luffy. Back then there were already debates about whether Zoro might eventually be stronger or could become stronger than Luffy himself. I mean, he was the first to seriously injure Kaido on the rooftop. He was the first one where Kaido felt forced to dodge out of all the supernova on the roof. Even for Luffy, Zoro was the first to make Kaido afraid. Even Big Mom was genuinely shocked when she saw Zoro's attack coming back. An attack that made the world's strongest creature sweat. What would this kind of attack do to Luffy? And you can say what you want, but hey, I think these attacks could even knock out Luffy, even if just for a moment. Sure, Luffy is currently stronger, but what could this mean for the future, and could it happen that Zoro eventually challenged his captain? Even though you might think, no way, Zoro stands for loyalty, he would do anything for his captain, I have to disappoint you because it's more likely than you think. Zoro's base for respect is strength, and there have been several moments to prove this. Let's remember back to Usopp leaving the crew. When Luffy misbehaved, Zoro was really pissed. He got extremely angry and was even disrespectful to Luffy. He even said he would leave the crew himself if Luffy didn't do the right thing, meaning even though Zoro is loyalty personified, this is only true when it comes to his captain. If he no longer sees Luffy as his captain, meaning he doesn't respect him anymore, then he wouldn't be loyal either, which also wouldn't be necessary. Even on Fishman Island, Zoro said when Luffy used the Conqueror's Haki, "This is the least I expect from my captain, otherwise he couldn't be my captain." So here we make it clear and emphasize with this statement. If Luffy is not stronger, then Zoro won't recognize him as his captain, and so he will lose respect and therefore loyalty. The condition is that Zoro must always be weaker than Luffy for loyalty to exist. And recently I was laying in my bed and asked myself, wait a minute, what if Zoro somehow loses respect for Luffy? I'm sure that if Zoro had witnessed what happened with Sanji when Sanji hit Luffy, he would have killed Sanji first and then challenged Luffy for not standing up as the man and showing his crewmates who the boss is. Zoro is simply an alpha male, and that's why his captain has to be even more alpha, and believe me, Zoro would have cut Sanji into pieces if he had seen that on Whole Cake Island. It's kind of funny knowing that Zoro had no clue about what happened back then. So let me ask you and you answer in the comments, do you think it's possible that Zoro at some point realizes something or maybe notices after a defeat by Luffy? I could have won this fight. I'm questioning whether you can even be my captain anymore. I'm challenging you, Luffy. I mean, sure, it seems so unbelievable to us because Zoro is so loyal, but you really need to understand that this loyalty comes from Luffy's strength. Of course, they are also friends, but Zoro himself said that if he were stronger, Luffy couldn't be his captain. But let's assume for a moment that this fight happens. How would this fight even look? And unfortunately, I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a Zoro fanboy. But let's put the facts on the table so no one can say you are just a Zoro fanboy. Zoro has become very strong after Wano Kuni. He possesses Conqueror's Haki and even Advanced Conqueror's Haki. And even though Armament Haki is very strong in One Piece now, swords are still a weakness for Luffy. Zoro could even inflict great damage on Kaido, a character with the most powerful defense we have seen in One Piece. I already mentioned what kind of offensive power Zoro has, since both Kaido and Big Mom were genuinely shocked when they saw Zoro's powerful attacks. And I would say Luffy doesn't have a strong defense as Kaido. If an attack like that hit Luffy, since it's also his weakness, it could seriously injure Luffy because you have to understand, even though Haki plays a big role, if Zoro's attack pierces through Luffy's Haki, Luffy's body is still made of rubber and Luffy will suffer more damage than a normal human. I'm not saying that this fight has to happen at some point or that it will will happen to this extent. But if it does happen, it won't be an easy fight for Luffy. And Zoro has already proven this to us again, and I will show it to you right now. Luffy did beat Rob Lucci, and he did it very easily. He was goofing around a lot. Of course, that's part of his fighting style, but we all know it wasn't really hard for Luffy to beat Rob Lucci. A lot of people criticize Zoro, saying that he only gets weak characters and doesn't get to shine in this Egghead arc. But that changed very quickly because Zoro also had the honor of taking on Rob Lucci, and our green hair friend just knocked him out. He handled him, and even with trick shots, he threw his swords into the air, caught it again, and then finished Rob Lucci off. I mean, okay, that sounds weird. Rob Lucci was so fascinated, the dude thought he had to pull a white beard and die while standing. It was hilarious seeing all the memes, but the point I'm making is that Oda clearly emphasizes here, look what Luffy did, Zoro can do too. So the two of them aren't that far apart. And please guys, don't hate. I know that Luffy is stronger. If there are people who think Zoro is stronger, write it in the comments right now. I want to know. And I want to discuss it with you, but I have to be honest. But now after Wano Kuni, I think there's not much distance between these two characters. Believe me, if this fight happens, it will be a very interesting one. It might even get to the point where Luffy wins, but has to push himself to his limits. The reason I think Zoro might have the upper hand in the fight is because of Luffy's character. Luffy would have difficulties giving 100%. Even against Sanji he struggled to even make a single move. Now imagine he has to fight Zoro, his best friend. I can imagine that he would develop a mental block and not be able to give his all. But Zoro, no way, this guy is a badass. He doesn't care who's in front of him. If it's not his captain anymore, he will give 100% and do everything to take that person down. That's why I think this fight could push Luffy to his limits. I mean, even Usopp back then somehow managed to push Luffy to his limits. Even Usopp. So just think about that. This fight will be more interesting than you think. Personally, I don't think a fight of that magnitude will happen in One Piece. But I do think that at some point in the story, Oda will show us another conflict between Zoro and Luffy. There will be a moment where Zoro questions his captain's authority again. Zoro is the right-hand man and every decision is controlled by him, just like with Usopp back then. He will again question the next decisions he disagrees with. So it's very likely that at some point in the story Zoro will say, what is this? I don't support this and you can't be my captain like that. And then it could lead to a conflict, maybe even a clash, which I would find very cool because it would strengthen the bond between Zoro and Luffy even more. But the reason I don't believe there will be a huge fight between the two is that we are running out of time, guys. We see that the One Piece story is rushing forward, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but rather that we are covering a lot in a short amount of time. We see that every chapter, every panel is important, something significant always happens. Oda himself also said One Piece will only run for another 4 or 5 years, so where would there be room to squeeze in such an event? There's still a lot left in the story that is much more important. The past, the story of Joy Boy, the final war, Luffy's bond between his father, Elbaf, what will happen to Garp, what's going on with the admirals, the fight against Akainu and Imsama, so many stuff. I could go on until this video goes 40 minutes. There are so many things that need to be addressed, so many different plot points, and a conflict within the Straw Hats wouldn't be the optimal thing. The Straw Hats have solidified themselves, they are a crew, a family, and while it could be possible and even plausible, I just don't think Oda will squeeze something like that in. If the story were going to last another 10 or 15 years, I would bet my hand that there would be a fight between the two. But as things stand, I think there may be a conflict or maybe just a disagreement. It's also possible that none of this happens, but I'm pretty sure it would be a very cool plot. But also drop your opinion. What do you think? Do you think Zoro is much weaker than Luffy, or do you think they are pretty close? It's a very interesting debate, and while I'm not a power scaler, nor do I want to be, a power scaling debate between the two would definitely be exciting, and this could even change after Elbaf. We don't know what Zoro will do on Elbaf, how the fight against the next enemies will go, and what the fight against Mihawk will be like. What will happen in the future? It can always vary, and I'm excited to see what clues Oda will give us. But that's it for now. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and drop a comment. It means a lot to me, and friends, I read every comment. I remember your names. Let's build a community and face the last years of One Piece together. That's all from me for now. Peace out.